Welcome back to the REIMAGINE 2020 V2 virtual conference. I'm Roshan Mirajkar, the University Program Assistant Director here at MouseBelt, and I'm very excited to welcome back a returning organization, the KCL Blockchain Society. I'm here with Anurag and Lawrence. Why don't you all introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Anurag. I'm a director at the KCL Blockchain Society. I'm entering my final year at university studying political economy. And earlier this year, we founded, and now I run the consulting group at the society.
Hey guys, I'm Lawrence. I'm the Vice President for Business and Consulting at KCL Blockchain Society. I'm a penultimate year law student, and I've been with the society since the very first week in university.
Nice. Anurag, I talked to you last 3 months ago. So what have you sort of been working on, and what have you seen in the world since we talked last?
Yeah, so a lot of things have been happening in the world. And as far as KCL Blockchain, we've been focusing on two things. First, it's been our consulting operations. Given that a lot of sectors are being changed very drastically by COVID, we've seen a lot of interest, and we've been working a lot in the areas of fine art and fashion, given, for example, now the need for digital ways, and people can't see paintings in real life anymore when they want to buy them. And we've also been working in things like capital markets, in that people want their money, they want to not go broke, they don't want to have bankruptcies. And so we try working in that as well. And then beyond consulting, we've also picked up some individual projects outside the society, but we have society support nonetheless. So, for example, Lawrence will go on and talk about one of the ventures he went on, and then I've been working on a COVID-19 immunity management sort of platform. And yeah, in the grand scheme of things, a lot going on. And Lawrence?
Sure. Do you want me to go on about one of the individual?
Yeah, just talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can cut
sure.
this out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Right. So one of the projects outside the consultancy stream that I've been working on recently was the Future of Blockchain competition. It was hosted by Stake Zero in both London and Berlin. And so we actually sent a couple of teams in with a number of really, really exciting projects. The one I personally worked on was a blockchain-based crowdfunding platform that allowed for tiered investments. So money would only be released upon the meeting of specific milestones in the life cycle of a project. And all the backers would be given a vote, and that was weighted based on their investment, whether or not that money would be released. And that actually came first in the Zilliqa challenge. And some other teams we entered worked on a voting platform, QVote, which we've actually used in our own society elections before.
That's pretty cool to hear you guys actually using blockchain in your society. I was going to ask you all, so in some of the projects that you all deal with, I know that consultancy is a huge arm of everything you all do. Do you all focus on regional projects, or do you try to focus on projects from a variety of different locations? Lawrence, I know you're in Germany right now, but yeah, just wanted to get more insight on them.
Yeah, I'd love to share. So as a society, we're actually a very, very diverse batch, and we're also quite multidisciplinary in what we do. And that has just really naturally resulted in also our interests being really widespread, and especially international. And so for that reason, you know, we've worked with clients in Asia, trying to expand in the Southeast Asian market, but more recently have also expanded to assist clients in the Latin America region, in countries like Colombia, Honduras, Ecuador, Brazil. And that has been really, really exciting and fulfilling as well.
So has that been a recent transition with working with like a lot of international clients, or did you all do that before? And the reason why I ask is because I can assume there's a lot of challenges with especially working with clients from all over the world. But you know, has it been something you all have already been doing?
So it really has been one of our strengths from the start. I think our very international focus, but that has only become more pronounced as time has gone on. Also, we've collected expertise in these different areas. So a lot of our clients actually, when they expand into new markets, they want to learn more about the sort of legal barriers that they might encounter. So any relevant regulation to their business. And so the more we've done work in these regions, such as Southeast Asia, the more specialized expertise we've collected and been able to then apply to new projects as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point in the sense of like blockchain and crypto is has this sense of openness, but at the same time, depending on where you are regionally, you could have certain limitations. So I think it's interesting, interesting balance. Are there any specific projects that you all are excited to share? I know you were talking about how everything is related to finance right now in the blockchain space, but maybe we'll see a growth of other types of projects in different sectors.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right that there's this, for many years now, there's been this hype regarding DeFi and other financial applications of blockchain technology. And while that's certainly very relevant and has huge amounts of potential, it's been really, really interesting to see blockchain technology also applied in less obvious use cases, right? So in the Latin America region, one of our partners, Emerge, has used blockchain technology for social impact projects. So for example, recently, I've been working on an online marketplace that essentially allows students that are unable to afford fees associated to schooling to monetize the art they create, and then using smart contracts have that automatically allocated to educational institutions. And so this sort of more out of the box creative application of blockchain technology has been really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always hear a lot of projects talk about most of the financial applications, but I do think blockchain is that broad in where it has the potential to disrupt a lot of different categories like healthcare and, like you said, social impact. So what do you all think is needed in order for a lot more of these sectors to be disrupted? And what I mean by that is I see disruption where crossing that threshold where people are actually using another alternate form of technology. So maybe it's like contactless payments, and maybe it's like ride sharing or something like that, where you actually make that crossroad. Anurag, what do you think is needed to sort of cross a lot of these thresholds? Like because of COVID, we see a rise of contactless payments, and now might be a time where maybe payments can actually be disrupted with some of the blockchain applications that people don't just talk about, but that people actually use. Like I've definitely seen countries like even China require blockchain to be used to track different forms of data, because I mean, people are realizing that, okay, maybe this decentralized data is the only thing that we can trust. Or even right now, how much money has been printed even since the time we talked, right?
Yeah, totally right. I think in a lot of industries, the thing that's needed is perhaps other emerging technologies besides blockchain to also develop. Because a lot of the times in a lot of industries, blockchain is just a different way of sharing information. But at the end of the day, if the input is what determines the output. And so, for example, rise in the Internet of Things is critical for a lot of industries like supply chain, because it's by linking and communicating the data from the Internet of Things that the blockchain gains a lot of value, or you could say its value multiplies almost. In that, although right now it's making a lot of things better, once other emerging technologies, I suppose, further emerge, we're going to see its value rise a lot more in comparison. But like you said, that's not to say it doesn't have any value on its own. Even in the world of fintech, like you said, like one of our partners is, for example, a Chinese institute called Park, and they do a lot of work in this space of digital assets and blockchain, and very much like you said, smart cities technology is a very big thing for them. And like I said, even though blockchain is at the forefront of how they plan to communicate with technologies in their new smart cities, the underlying fact is that what they're communicating is data from other technologies. So it's more about the ecosystem than specifically blockchain these days.
I think, Anurag, what you've said about the ecosystem and then other emerging technologies is absolutely right. It's what we've been seeing, and I think needs to happen even more, is realizing that blockchain alone doesn't necessarily equal sort of breakthroughs or really, really great innovation, but it needs to be cleverly combined with other emerging technologies that have also now, you know, become more developed to really create something that can have a big impact, I think.
Yeah, and then a bit on like where we've seen this in our projects real quick. So for example, like Lawrence was talking about working with Emerge, they're trying to do stuff with geolocation, and there's a lot of projects these days about blockchain journalism. In our other projects, for example, in art, we're seeing 3D scanning firms, their success being very important because once you can scan art more closely, so there's more information to put on the blockchain, and the whole process just becomes better. So yeah, there's some examples.
So is this sort of the tipping point you guys think, or the fire that's needed specifically for, I would say, industries, both large and small? You know, even here at MouseBelt, we've seen a lot of industries join our Blockchain Education Alliance, and all of them are working on interesting projects, is what I can really appreciate, where they're coming out of sort of the ideation phase and they're actually building a lot of pilots, or in some cases actually using blockchain at some level. Do you think that, given some of the problems that we have actively, like voting, I'm sure even in the UK and the US, have both been subject to a lot of voting talk, and the United States Postal Service recently filed a blockchain patent, and I'm sure you all are know about the status of the controversy surrounding the USPS. So do you think that corporations are seeing all of this technology in a different way? I'll just give my last thoughts and then see what you guys think. Like, I'll give one example of something we can talk about. You know, MicroStrategy buying $250 million worth of Bitcoin to decrease their risk. And then in other cases, we have, I'll go back to the IBM working with the Maersk to reduce just the cost of shipping. So, you know, does it turn into just saving money, or does it actually turn into like value that you just can't provide using centralized means?
So when you say, is this the tipping point, do you mean more just this point in time, X years after blockchain has become popular? Or do you mean COVID specifically?
Yeah, like kind of contributing to everything in general, you know, not just COVID, not like bringing up the MicroStrategy example again. You know, they're doing that to protect against inflation. It might not even be related to COVID. It might be related to other macro factors of different just currencies in the world. So I find that interesting too. Like, now is just a very interesting time where what maybe I see a lot of organizations and people looking for using technology to save them, basically, is my last thought. I want to understand what you think about that, either from your perspective as a student, or how you think corporations are thinking about this disruptive technology now.
Yeah. Lawrence, you want to start this one off?
Sure.
Or should I?
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll start off, and you can take a minute to think, and then. So.
No, just what I have is better for closing than for opening.
That works. That works for me.
Yeah.
1 second. I've lost my train of thought.
No worries.
Right. Okay. So I think in previous years, a lot of companies with big budgets, they started off on this blockchain journey because it was the cool thing to do. It was something to make the headlines. it had all that promise, and firms didn't want to miss out on saying, they're innovative, they're using new technologies. But now we're at this really, really interesting and I think important point in time where the biggest hype wave is past, and companies are now not looking at the reputational benefits of using blockchain technology, but they're actually realizing the real underlying value that the technology can provide for their business in the long term. And so now more and more companies are thinking, this technology is still around. Clearly, there must be some true benefit to it beyond just the hype. And so that has resulted in, I think, a lot more really, really thought out and sustainable use cases and companies truly implementing blockchain technology in a clever way.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
now on the public sector side of things, in terms of government, like you mentioned, like you said, yeah, government is paying much more attention to blockchain and DLT innovation than it has in the past. For example, a lot of places looking at CBDCs now. And a few months ago, Lawrence and I actually had the opportunity to speak with the ex-US commissioner of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And so he leads the US Digital Dollar Foundation. And
that's really cool.
Yeah. And from there, we did our own research, spoke to some other people. And I think although nowadays people do see a lot more value in blockchain, see more value in DLT, and they place trust in it, at the same time, in some places, it becomes a high risk, high reward scenario in that if you place trust in it and it ends up not succeeding, then blockchain loses a lot of its momentum for the future. And for example, in places like in Latin America, one of their biggest hurdles in deciding should they implement CBDCs is just thinking about the whole trust factor, because in some places there are problems with government trust already. And so that sort of is a big hindrance for things like digital welfare that would help a lot of people. But even though this is the tipping point for the technology, I'd say there's a lot of prerequisites that differ in various regions that would be useful to address before we just jump on the blockchain.
Yeah, so do you think that basically some regions are more suitable to benefit from this technology? And why is it that blockchain has such a high promise of success? I want to say, like, it's kind of like all or nothing, like what you just said. Basically, if blockchain fails, then I do agree in many cases, like, people won't look at it again because it's so hard to even trust in the first place. But then it's like, are people going to start trusting the technology more because the companies they know adopt it, or will it be like startups and maybe like student groups that provide that trust? I personally think it's going to be more so the student groups, just because of education. There's like part of it is adoption, I think, but a large part of it is educating how the world works right now.
I think that's really interesting, Roshan, because it will, in my opinion, hugely depend on the region we're talking about. I agree that student groups like ourselves can really shape the dialogue to a large extent.
Wait. Lawrence, let's hit students last. That was the third question he asked. Let's go on.
So what I was gonna speak about was China.
Yeah.
I want to speak about how China.
I can give you all the students and like the China stuff. And I'll just address the first 2 points about where it'll succeed, just so it's like timely.
That works.
Okay,
perfect.
sure, go ahead.
All right, cool. Yeah, so on note of where, or with the different places that are suitable, it's an interesting question because for example, if you look at developed countries, because they're so used to innovating usually, there's less of an activation power if you look at it, in terms of like how much new enthusiasm is needed for a new technology to take place. And so there's that. But then also in developed countries, you see a lot more strength in legacy systems. A lot of industries just don't want to move on after they have something successful. So it's both pros and cons. And then if you look at undeveloped countries, it's not a very simple claim to make there either, because you see a lot of regions trying to jump across generations and trying to skip a technological revolution. For example, you see people in Eastern Asia through like China's involvement with the Belt and Road Initiative, trying to skip from 3G up to 5G, or from, in some places they don't even have internet, and now there's posters for 5G coming. So
Yeah.
and then on the second point about like why blockchain is so successful in some industries, I think at the end of the day, it is just an important technology. It affects a lot of things, and insofar as what it does at its core, it's very simple. It shares information in a trustless manner and potentially more fast. Everything that requires the flow of data is going to benefit from that. And so I think it's success prone just because there's a lot of things out there. A lot of things would benefit from being faster. And insofar as this can make it happen, then it gets a lot of credit. And Lawrence can talk a bit more about the role of student groups and the youth and propelling this.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's a lot of touch points. So yeah, thanks for your unique insight there, because yeah, I just always thought it's interesting. Like there's so much promise on this technology. I get that it's disruptive, but there's a lot of disruptive technology, but this one has like a lot riding on it, right? It's like this stuff has to work, and it's totally what you said. I mean, if it's a trustless system, the trust is at the foundation. It's not like others. Lawrence, I'll let you go ahead.
Anurag, you can actually speak about the student groups as well if you want. I just really wanted to highlight the example of China. You can cut this and I'll jump right back in. So one of for me personally, one of the most interesting, I think, future promises when it comes to widespread adoption of blockchain technology, or use case scenarios that use blockchain technology, is CBDCs in China specifically, just because the Chinese government has realized that they can utilize the promise of CBDCs to actually strengthen their grip and their oversight on transactions within the country. So China has always been at the very forefront of sort of digital transactions, digital money. The adoption rates of WeChat Pay, Alipay are absolutely staggering. The billions transacted every single day using simple QR codes on your smartphone. That is the perfect breeding ground for widespread adoption of CBDCs as well. But with that, I think come concerns that this promising technology that's so renowned for traditionally being decentralized and putting power not in the hands of one central agency, but really dispersed, suddenly also stands for this CBDC that's fully controlled and analyzed and weaponized, perhaps even, by the central government. And that's, I think, something that will be really, really interesting to witness, and something that needs to be watched with caution.
Yeah.
Okay. Roshan, is it coming off as a bit specifically about China?
Can you repeat that?
Is it coming off as if the weaponizing bit about data is specifically about China?
No, I don't think so. Because like what I was going to ask you both, just a short question, is like, say you had a company or organization that wanted to use blockchain for, I don't want to say directly nefarious means, but maybe to gain an edge in a maybe unethical manner, but they're trying to use blockchain and it would produce a lot of benefits. How would you all go about that from maybe like a consultancy side? Like, what would you actually advise them, you know, being kind of, basically not as unbiased as possible? Because this technology is like, because no one controls it, I always respect all angles to it. You know, North Korea does mine Bitcoin to fund their operations. I mean, it's an effect of the protocol working the way that it's intended. So just curious, like, how would you all handle these situations, and have you all handled any of these types of situations?
Yeah, so a sizable amount of our work over the summer has been in the areas of, for example, anti-money laundering regulation, and also looking at like different banking regular forms of collateral, securities, all that very fun stuff. And at the end of the day, as a student consulting group, well,
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit, but keep going.
that heed the different recommendations. But I mean, that's not always possible. They'll have their own internal calculus that we might not be aware of. Okay, well, I was gonna end it there anyways and hand it over to Luke, to Lawrence.
No, I don't think I have much to add on this. You're the director. This is I feel
No, like Roshan, like we tell them what we want them to do and they do it or they don't. Like there's not really much to say here.
Okay. I'm saying, what if one of them came to you with like a unethical type of project, like not straight up, but maybe they wanted to use it in a way where you knew they could wield more power or something like that. Because I definitely see organizations out there who stayed away from blockchain before, but what Lawrence mentioned, right? Like, can you turn it around and use the very technology that's supposed to democratize trust, but then can you privatize that, add blockchain on top of that, and now it's suddenly it is a weapon. It might be worse than something that's centralized because you don't have control over it.
Yeah, so I suppose best to answer that in two parts. So first talk about the whole idea of weaponizing, and second, what we try to do. So first on weaponizing, I find that a lot of times when like these sort of projects go wrong, sometimes the intent isn't to do wrong. It's just the result of not having a properly set up infrastructure. For example, maybe it's an energy, maybe it's a network that monitors green energy usage or energy usage in general across like a neighborhood. And maybe the really badly, you were able to figure out, oh, there's only one really big building in this neighborhood. There's only one really big power bill. It's probably them. And you can make those sort of intuitions. And so I think a lot of the time it's just a problem in that it's not well fleshed out enough. But you're right, a lot of people do come through with nefarious intent. We see countries trying to get around sanctions through blockchain, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess on the point of how we sort of navigate, it's probably best to like talk about what we don't do in the consulting group. We actively pursue projects that our members are deeply interested in, or that we think the founders just doing something actually really innovative and it's worth joining along. It's very infrequent that a company will reach out that we haven't really thought of before and will engage with them, usually because we just rather prioritize doing things that we think will define the future or we've seen some sort of inkling of success for. And so far we're right, but maybe at some point we'll act differently.
And I brought this specific question up because I remembered a situation where I believe someone in the US went and gave a presentation. I think it was in North Korea, and they got arrested here or something like that.
It was in like I think it was in China, and then they got contacted from like some spies or something.
Exactly, China or North Korea. But the premise was actually just sharing information, not even building anything or really providing any specific layout for things. But I just thought it was interesting that just for education, a lot of organizations out there are scared. And I think the reason why, again, is because this technology is supposed to replace a lot of them. I know you all work on a lot of projects. What would you say is sort of next for KCL Blockchain? What sort of projects do you all want to work on in the future? And are you sort of changing that based on how the world is just turning out to be in terms of more virtual? I'm sure you all are already a virtual group operating everywhere. but you know, is that going to change the projects that you all are working on?
Yeah. Here, Lawrence, I can address the first. I'm going to say a little bit about like the whole like China and like other countries doing stuff like potentially nefarious, and then can you talk about the future?
The future of the society, like of our what we do as our consulting stream, or?
Yeah, sure. Like, what do you all want to accomplish in the future? You know, if there are any organizations out there, companies watching, like, what would you tell them that you know, you want to work with them on?
Here, Lawrence, can you talk about the future of the society, like in terms of like, oh, like we're pushing out like our journal and like all that stuff, and then I can say like a sentence at the end about like the different industries you want.
Yeah, sure. But do you want to? So do I start or do you start?
Right. So I'll do something about like the. I forget what the whole like the. I got it. Right. Cool.
Got it.
I do work with you different countries.
Can't hear you that well. Maybe you want to repeat your segment. Yeah, Anurag, can't hear you too well. Do you want to repeat your segment maybe?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Should I rejoin? Or are we good?
No, you're good. You can just repeat what you were saying. Like, what's the future of KCL blockchain, and what types of projects do you all want to work on?
Yeah. Okay. So one element of the future, or one element of the society's work that we aim to do more of in the future is our work with governments and in the public sector. So like I said before, we do work with a few different governments. For example, we're one of the partners on the Smart Dubai, which is department of like the Dubai government, for their like Smart Cities Council. We work with a pretty big state-backed fund in China, helping them look at the UK and different innovations there. And like you said before, there's a lot of countries where sometimes like the intent isn't clear for the things they do. By the end of the day, at least our goal is to only engage with things where we can assess that there's a clear educational benefit. And as far as we can tell, based on the other partnerships and so forth, that everything is happening, let's say, above the line. Lawrence?
Sure. So as a society more generally, some of the things that we'll be looking to grow further is our education, sort of the education we provide to our members to really drive forward thought leadership in the blockchain space as well amongst sort of the student community, and then also just more publications as well. So besides physical events, workshops that we've run in the past, we also want to further expand our actually written publication. So in terms of education, we launched our curriculum to new members last year for the first time, and that was a huge success. People really appreciated learning about the technology from people that were from a similar background, right? From fellow students to learn about a technology that their fellow students use every day in the projects that they do in the society. So that was a huge success, and we're hoping to build on that and expand that further. In terms of thought leadership and our written publication, we're soon going to publish the second edition of our journal called Oracle. So we have lots of really passionate, interesting writers pushing out their articles really about pretty much anything that you can think of. It's a really diverse publication, just like our society. And that's going to be really interesting going forward. And then finally, we've built really fantastic partnerships over this past year or so, working on just great projects. And all of these are, have grown from sort of one-time projects that we worked on together into these beautiful long-term partnerships. And it's going to be, I think, brilliant to capitalize on that going forward. and just think bigger and better.
Yeah, and I suppose to go like hyper specific for to close off. Up until now, a lot of our work has focused, like I said in the very beginning, in the capital markets and fintech space because we have a very close relationship with the guys at R3 who run Corda. And we've also been working a lot in the fine art and fashion space just because we're positioned in London. We're all interested in the art and I guess some people will call them the finer things. And so we like focusing on that sort of stuff, but that's not to say that we exclusively do that, right? Like, for example, we work with an AI firm which does nothing with blockchain, but it's an emerging technology. We really like that they want to pursue educational technology. We do stuff in the public sector, helping out people managing COVID, stuff like that. And I suppose for the future, right now we've had we're grateful that all of our partners have either been the #1 in their industry or the first to have done something in the industry. And for the future, I think the one sector that we all agree is going to become more important is that of supply chain. So much so that we even see a lot of companies who do nothing in supply chain now trying to come up with some sort of supply chain solution. And that's probably the biggest place we're going to put focus on for the coming year.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing your insight. I think it was really interesting to talk to you all, Anurag, you after a couple months, because a lot of these insights that you guys are sharing, it's not as obvious or as intuitive for the people listening out there for them to just read about these things on the news. I think just like how the internet was created, you know, from in universities all around the US. I think that student groups, consultancies like you sort of are filling that new gap. So before we end off this segment, what is one thing you guys are excited about just in the next year of just the space? Like, where do you think we'll be in a year? And we'll get your last thoughts.
I'm quite excited for, specifically in terms of blockchain, I'm quite excited for the future of blockchain in terms of welfare payments and sort of, yeah, just like governmental programs run on blockchain. I think usually government is one of the slowest bodies to implement something.
Yeah.
And so it'd be quite interesting to see now them all of a sudden jump and use blockchain. And yeah, Lawrence?
So for me, similar to welfare payments, I'm also really excited about blockchain being used for more impactful projects, right? So I previously mentioned the work in Latin America, where, you know, the people that benefit from this technology are often traditionally underserved, uneducated. And so it can play a role there in just addressing issues with financial inclusion. And we're seeing that not only in Latin America, but also in countries like Southeast Asia, where remittance payments are just becoming so much cheaper and easier using blockchain technology. And so many more people are just finally accessing financial services. And that for me is really great to see.
Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere in the world where we've seen isn't doing this. For example, the United Nations is working on an intergovernmental platform as we speak. So I definitely think in the coming year, like a lot of this will become reality, and yeah, have a very different conversation this time next year.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep in touch with you all and keep hearing about updates month to month. Like every month, you guys have new updates. What's the best place people out there can reach out to you for collaboration and just learning more about the KCL blockchain?
I'll let you take that, Anurag. Go ahead.
Say the question again.
The best place people can reach out to you to learn more about KCL blockchain and for any collaborations.
Well, our website is just kclblockchain.com, very simple. But the best way to contact is either just Anurag at kclblockchain.com or Lawrence at kclblockchain.com. We try to keep it simple with that.
Okay, thank you all, and thank you all for tuning in to this university segment. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Been a pleasure, Roshan. Thank you.